Welcome to this scientific lecture on the fear-courage-productivity paradox. Today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating phenomena in human psychology and performance science. Let's start with a fundamental question. Why does fear of failure suppress our effort, yet confronting that very fear is what unlocks our highest performance? Research shows that fear of failure creates a psychological barrier. When we're afraid, our brain activates the amygdala, triggering a fight-or-flight response that actually reduces our cognitive capacity. Yet, paradoxically, the more we confront our fears, the more they dissolve. This is known as fear extinction in neuroscience. Each exposure weakens the fear response. Success becomes possible only when we accept the risk of failure. This acceptance shifts our brain from threat mode to opportunity mode. Let me give you a powerful analogy. Imagine you need to cross a shaky bridge, suspended over a canyon. The bridge represents your path to success. At first, the bridge feels incredibly unstable. Your first step onto it is terrifying. The bridge sways beneath you. But here's the remarkable thing. With every step you take, the bridge becomes more stable. Each step you take makes the bridge more stable. This isn't magic. It's because your confidence grows. Your movements become more assured, and you learn the rhythm of the bridge. If you stand still at the beginning, frozen by fear, the bridge remains shaky forever. You never discover that it can support you. The fear never dissolves. Now let's get rigorous. We can model this phenomenon mathematically. Let's define fear level as a function of time and exposure. Fear as a function of time equals f0 times e to the negative lambda t, where f0 is initial fear, lambda is the exposure coefficient, and t is time spent confronting the fear. f0 is your initial fear level. This is typically high when you first encounter a challenge. Let's say it starts at 100 on an arbitrary fear scale. Lambda is the exposure coefficient. This determines how quickly fear dissolves with exposure. A higher lambda means faster fear reduction. Typical values range from 0.1 to 0.5 per hour of exposure. T is time spent actively confronting the fear. This is cumulative exposure time, not just thinking about it, but actually doing the scary thing. Let's work through a concrete numerical example. Suppose your initial fear level is 100 and lambda is 0.2 per hour. At time 0, your fear is 100. This is your starting point, full of anxiety. After 1 hour of exposure, fear drops to 100 times e to the negative 0.2, which equals about 82. You've already reduced fear by 18%. After 5 hours of cumulative exposure, fear equals 100 times e to the negative 1, which is about 37. Fear has dropped by more than 60%. After 10 hours, fear drops to about 13.5. This is 86% reduction. The fear is almost completely dissolved. Here's the exponential decay curve. Notice how fear drops rapidly at first, then levels off. This is why the first few exposures are the most important. Now let's model productivity. Productivity is inversely related to fear. The more fear you have, the less productive you are. Productivity, as a function of time, equals P max times the quantity 1 minus e to the negative lambda t, where P max is your maximum potential productivity. When fear is high at time 0, productivity is near 0. Your cognitive resources are consumed by anxiety and threat detection. As fear dissolves through exposure, productivity approaches its maximum. You unlock your full cognitive and creative capacity. Let's use concrete numbers. Suppose your maximum productivity is 100 units per day, and lambda is still 0.2. At time 0, productivity is 100 times the quantity 1 minus 1, which equals 0. You're paralyzed by fear. After 1 hour of confronting fear, productivity jumps to about 18 units. You've unlocked 18% of your potential. After 5 hours, productivity reaches 63 units. You're now operating at 63% capacity. This is substantial progress. After 10 hours of exposure, productivity is 86.5 units. You're approaching your maximum potential. The fear barrier has largely dissolved. We can think of this in terms of activation energy, similar to chemical reactions. Let me ask a question. What prevents people from taking the first step? Here's an energy diagram. The vertical axis represents psychological energy required. Starting point is low energy, but you need to climb over an activation barrier. This barrier is the fear of failure. The initial activation energy is high because fear creates resistance. Your brain perceives danger and resists action. This is the peak of the curve. Once you climb over the barrier and take action, the energy required drops rapidly. You enter a flow state where momentum carries you forward. The success state on the right is actually lower energy than the paralyzed fear state. Taking action is less exhausting than chronic anxiety. Now let's examine the compound effect. Each act of courage doesn't just reduce current fear, it reduces future fear as well. New fear level equals old fear level times the quantity 1 minus r to the power n, where r is the reduction rate per exposure and n is number of exposures. Each exposure creates a multiplicative reduction. If each confrontation reduces fear by 20%, then r equals 0.2 and the base is 0.8. After 10 exposures with 20% reduction each time, fear equals 100 times 0.8 to the 10th power, which is about 11. Fear has dropped by 89%. This creates exponential courage growth. Courage is the inverse of fear. As fear decreases exponentially, courage increases exponentially. This is powerful compound growth. Let's connect this to neuroscience. The brain physically changes through exposure therapy. This is called neuroplasticity. Brain imaging studies show that amygdala activation decreases with repeated exposure to feared stimuli. The amygdala is the fear center of the brain. Simultaneously, prefrontal cortex activity increases. This is the rational, executive control center. It learns to regulate the amygdala's fear response. New neural pathways form that associate the previously feared stimulus with safety and capability. This is physical rewiring of the brain. There's a critical threshold in this process. Let me ask, when does performance start to accelerate rapidly? Productivity equals Pmax times the Heaviside function of F threshold minus F. This is a step function that activates when fear drops below a critical threshold. When fear drops below the threshold, performance suddenly jumps. This is why you often see breakthrough moments in personal development. Research suggests the threshold fear level is around 40 to 50 on a 100-point scale. Once you push through this, capabilities unlock rapidly. Let's apply this to a concrete example. Public speaking. This is one of the most common fears, even rated above death in some surveys. Imagine you need to give a presentation to a large audience. Your initial fear might be 95 out of 100. Your hands shake, your voice trembles. Your first speech, fear is 95, and you perform at maybe 25% of your capability. You survive, but it's painful. By your third speech, fear has dropped to 65. You're now performing at 50%. You notice improvement. By your 10th speech, fear is down to 30. You're performing at 85% capacity. You might even enjoy it. By speech 20, fear is only 15. You're performing at 95%. You're confident, engaging, persuasive. The transformation is complete. Now let's discuss what happens with avoidance. This is the opposite strategy, and it has devastating consequences. Fear with avoidance equals F0 times e to the positive beta t. Notice the positive exponent. Fear grows exponentially when avoided. Avoidance causes fear to grow exponentially over time. Each time you avoid the feared situation, you confirm to your brain that it's dangerous. If initial fear is 50 and beta is 0.1, after 10 time periods, fear grows to 50 times e to the 1, which equals 136. Fear has nearly tripled. This creates a vicious cycle. More fear leads to more avoidance, which leads to even more fear. Eventually, people become completely paralyzed. Let's do a rigorous cost-benefit analysis. What is the actual cost of confronting fear versus avoiding it? The cost of confrontation is short-term discomfort. You feel anxiety, stress, maybe embarrassment. This is temporary and peaks quickly. The benefit is long-term expanded capability. You gain skills, confidence, and opportunities. This compounds over your entire lifetime. The cost of avoidance is massive opportunity loss. You never develop the skill. You lose promotions, relationships, experiences. This is permanent. The benefit of avoidance is essentially zero. You get temporary relief, but the fear returns stronger. There's no actual benefit. The return on investment of confronting fear is lifetime benefits divided by initial discomfort, which often exceeds 1,000. For a few hours of discomfort, you gain decades of capability. Here's a practical question. What's the minimum exposure needed to start fear reduction? We can calculate this. Minimum time equals natural log of f0 over f target, all divided by lambda. This gives the exposure time needed to reach your target fear level. Suppose you want to reduce fear from 100 to 50, and lambda is 0.2. Let's calculate the minimum exposure time. Tmin equals natural log of 100 over 50 divided by 0.2. That's 0.693 divided by 0.2, which equals 3.47 hours of cumulative exposure. So roughly 3 to 4 hours of deliberate exposure can cut your fear in half. This is achievable. You could do this in a single weekend. Let's return to our bridge analogy and make it mathematical. Bridge stability increases with steps taken. Stability as a function of steps equals S max times the quantity 1 minus e to the negative alpha n, where n is the number of steps taken and alpha is the learning rate. After the first step, the bridge might feel only 20% stable. It's still scary, but you've proven it can hold you. By step 5, the bridge feels 60% stable. You're finding your rhythm, your confidence is building. By step 10, stability is 85%. The bridge that seemed impossibly shaky now feels reasonably secure. You're walking with confidence. But if you never take that first step, stability remains at 0% forever. The bridge never becomes stable because you never test it. What are the implications of this paradox for achieving peak performance in any domain? Peak performers in any field have systematically reduced their baseline fear through thousands of exposures. Olympic athletes, CEOs, performers, they've all walked this path. They embraced discomfort early in their development. They didn't avoid the scary presentations, the tough competitions, the critical feedback. Because their fear is low, their performance ceiling is much higher. They can access flow states and peak performance that fear-avoidant people never reach. There's a time value to courage. Similar to the time value of money, early courage compounds faster. Value equals courage times the quantity 1 plus r to the power t, where c is an act of courage, r is the growth rate, and t is time to compound. An act of courage taken at age 20 has 50 years to compound. The skills and confidence you build multiply over your entire career. The same act of courage at age 50 has only 20 years to compound. It's still valuable, but you lose 30 years of compound growth. If you start at 20 with 10% annual growth, after 50 years the value is c times 1.1 to the 50th power, which equals 117 times c, your courage multiplied by 117. Starting at 50, the value is only c times 1.1 to the 20th, which equals 6.7 times c. Still good, but you miss 110 units of value. Let me synthesize the key insights from this rigorous analysis of the fear-courage productivity paradox. First, fear decreases exponentially with exposure. The equation f of t equals f0 times e to the negative lambda t captures this precisely. Second, productivity increases as fear decreases. They're inversely related. High fear means low productivity, low fear unlocks peak performance. Third, the bridge metaphor is scientifically accurate. Stability increases with action, not with avoidance. Fourth, avoidance is catastrophic. Fear grows exponentially when avoided, creating a vicious cycle of paralysis. Fifth, early courage has massive compound returns. The time value of courage is enormous. Start confronting fears as early as possible. Sixth, success is impossible without accepting the risk of failure. The activation energy barrier must be crossed. There's no way around it, only through it. Finally, what are the practical action steps based on this analysis? Step 1. Identify your highest impact fear. What fear, if dissolved, would most expand your capabilities and opportunities? Step 2. Commit to systematic exposure. Based on our calculations, 3 to 4 hours of exposure cuts fear in half. Schedule this deliberately. Step 3. Track your fear level numerically. Rate it from 0 to 100 before each exposure. You'll see the exponential decay in real data. Step 4. Measure productivity improvements. Track how your performance improves as fear decreases. Make it quantitative and visible. Step 5. Adopt a never avoid policy. When you feel fear, that's your signal to approach, not retreat. Avoidance is poison to growth. Step 6. Celebrate small wins. Each step on the bridge, each point of fear reduction, each percentage gain in productivity, acknowledge these victories. Step 7. Remember the math. The return on investment of confronting fear exceeds 1,000 to 1, a few hours of discomfort for decades of capability.